Good afternoon, everyone. As you heard, my name is Gaja Zornada. I'm the director of the Computer History Museum in Slovenia. We've been around for over 20 years, and I'm here to present the topic of insufficiency of human-centric ethical guidelines in the age of AI through work done by myself and my co-author, Boštjan Špetič, our head of collections. Time has come for institutions of permanent memory to actively engage in discussions about the very delicate balance between preservation of historical digital records and respecting the individual's right to be forgotten in the age of AI. We need to explicitly address this topic within our organizational strategies, project charters, and actual implementations of our archival as well as presentational efforts. Some of you in the audience have encountered this challenge before and have tackled it in your own way. Some are yet to engage with this rather new development. Let my presentation be a sample, a case study, and perhaps a springboard for a broad and long-lasting discussion on challenges lying ahead of all of us. I will argue our current guidelines may be lacking or even insufficient in the coming age of artificial intelligence-driven content exploration. New and different approaches to our work in archives, libraries, and especially museums might be called for, and potential edge use case scenarios need to become part of preventive planning for the future, where regulators will always respond retrospectively, causing an ethical lag with tangible consequences. Preservation and presentation of web history is crucial for maintaining both an adequate cultural record of our age, ever since we fully matured from an analog society into a digital-first society, fundamentally transforming all aspects of our lives by porting them online. And it's also critical in an effort to preserve an informational record of our age, since disappearance of legacy online information sources is becoming an increasingly prevalent issue arising from economic and political trends in managing the web. However, the early internet era was marked by a prevailing sense of informality, transience, and relative obscurity. Users shared personal stories, opinions, images, and media with an audience that was human and relatively limited. Content was posted without any foresight whatsoever that decades later AI systems would have the ability to index, analyze, and utilize this material at a massive scale. With AI tools capable of scraping, aggregating, and generating new content based on historical data, legacy web content is no longer dormant or obsolete. Instead, it becomes a part of the dynamic and evolving information ecosystem where it can be reinterpreted, quoted, and even weaponized without the original creator's consent. Legacy content, such as a blog post from 2002, may be misleading when consumed in isolation, because it can reflect outdated social norms, attitudes, and economic circumstances that have since changed. Legacy content also showcases outdated technologies, data management, design, and user interactions. But most importantly, legacy content, like current content, contains temporally specific information tied to relevance within a given time in much the same way as source literature is always considered with a reference to the time of publishing. Archival as well as presented legacy web content needs to be as complete and as authentic as possible without hindering the user experience by framing or manipulating the source location. A practice that served us in our museum very well, both for research as well as presentation purposes, until the scale of potential impact was changed fundamentally by the widening use of AI tools, and the human-centric approach to content consumption was rendered nearly obsolete. When AI resurfaces legacy content, loss of context can lead to misinterpretations, reputational harm, or cultural insensitivity, as even the meaning of individual words changes over time, especially in colloquial conversation. Fundamentally, this becomes a question of data versus personhood. AI treats data as input for optimization and generation of new content, synthesis. It lacks awareness that behind every post, image, or comment is a person with evolving rights and dignity. Human-centric ethics emphasize consent and empathy, but these values are not inherently observed by AI systems. At the moment we lost control of the access funnel, directing the user's access to legacy live content, the balance scales of exposure to unfair treatment or exposure to the potential of unfair treatment were tipped over. If before we were able to guide the reader's discovery path in at least 99% of the cases and prepare them by pre-providing contextual awareness before they interfaced with the legacy content, we are now facing rogue bot users we do not have the opportunity to guide. In an age of automatic harvesting and processing, an age that we saw coming through our keynote this morning, it is the algorithmic logic that performs this detailed scrutiny, and the consequences of resurfacing legacy content are amplified even more. When AI technologies are involved on a large scale, taken en masse, processed en masse, and regurgitated en masse, in many different contexts without clear outcomes, such as in the case of non-consensual training. Many AI models are trained on publicly accessible web data. But we know that publicly accessible is a term that can change over time, either by intent or by undesired proceedings. This includes archival content where original authors did not foresee such use and in most cases never explicitly agreed to contribute to the training of AI systems because those weren't envisioned. The ripple effect we are concerned about comes from AI's ability to synthesize and amplify such data across platforms. These are scenarios in which content that does not explicitly reveal personal information can still expose the data subject in undesired ways. Grabbing dispersed data points and inferring from a vast multitude of sources would take research effort and it would take clear intent from a human user's perspective. So motivation as well as resources would need to be abundantly present. With AI analysis, this load of work is a matter of seconds, not even minutes. Our main concern here is the scale and the permanence. AI can replicate and disseminate content indefinitely. Traditional notions of ephemeral and private communication are rendered obsolete when a single data point can be archived and repurposed endlessly. And the results are generative outputs, which can contain various levels of AI hallucinations. Sources are obfuscated, and even if prompted to be listed, can be again generated with or without AI hallucinations. This is an illustration of a very simple and mostly harmless example of data augmentation through AI synthesis across platforms and time. Mere split second inquiry to the ChatGPT LLM with a prompt, who is Insufficiency, delivered an in-depth analysis of occurrence and references to the mentioned online nickname, as well as the responding result tied to the personal name of the individual behind the web nickname. If we were to look at the individual sources, they contain either the nickname, either the personal name, or both, providing the key. Notably, the various sources have not been needed to be named in the prompt, and the existence of the key connecting the nickname and the personal name was not a known component in the prompt. No prompt action was needed for AI to take everything it could get a hold of. If the following prompt would have requested some more in-depth information, insights would have included even further exposure of personal online traces as well as algorithmic deduction. AI is able to process amounts of information we up until now never considered as part of the same processing whole. And the process also proved to be far from deterministic. AI may draw conclusions and inferences about individuals, influencing public perception and potentially affecting career prospects, in some cases, legal outcomes. Combining sources far beyond our knowledge and insight, we could inadvertently expose a data subject beyond their singular identity or presence, which can be both helpful or harmful as the world around these individuals changes with time. we have very recent contemporary examples of what happens when political climates and public behavior is treated differently, which can help us realize how far-reaching the effects of easy and widespread use of AI web analysis can be. So how should we preserve and present the history of the web? Should we just redact all of it? AI does not possess the capability for moral reflection or for emotional understanding. It cannot gauge whether the use of a particular data point may cause harm or whether its output is fair or respectful. The human reader, on the other hand, is naturally able to contextually infer that a piece of reconstructed online content is part of a legacy web segment intended to be presented as a historical monument to the online world and respond accordingly. Either this happens by direct reading of the context provided by the legacy source or through the path of entry. This awareness does not need to be additionally pre-programmed. Human ethics depend on an ability to foresee the consequences of actions. In contrast, the unpredictable outcomes of the emergent behavior of AI systems often leads to unanticipated results, making accountability and ethical foresight increasingly complex. Yes, the pressure brought forward by the efficiency, economic, human resource, and time efficiency of mass analysis tools is a given, and something we need to tackle whether we like it or not. In our experiments on various collection samples, AI has so far failed to show any clear distinction between open archival or reconstructed web content and contemporary web content. The ethical challenge here lies not just in the publication of legacy content, but in providing clear guidance for automatic processing. Explicit machine-readable labeling and instructions are in order. Moving toward post-human ethical frameworks to address the observed shortcomings requires a fundamental shift in how we think about instrumentalizing ethics in the digital age. The new framework must account not for only human values, but also for the unique characteristics and limitations of AI. From a pure ethical, we are moving on to potentially instrumental technical solutions, such as implementing ethics of machine perception in the form of standards that guide AI interpretation and utilization of human-generated content, including mechanisms for recognizing and preserving context, intention, and cultural nuance. Modernizing the right to be forgotten by strengthening technical and legal avenues that allow individuals to retract or reframe past digital content. This includes tools for content obfuscation, AI unreadability, and retroactive consent management. And creating new AI-centric data licensing models that differentiate between public accessibility and AI trainability. Content could be open to humans, but restricted from being used in training of AI systems or in AI synthesis without explicit permission. And expanding the notions of consent beyond the individual consent to consider collective networked implications. For instance, a single post might reference or affect others in a community, necessitating a broader consent model. While AI-powered tools are reshaping the reading and presentation of web archives, public discourse, cultural memory, and knowledge production, the ethical lag between technological capability and regulations widens. There's little we can do to predict how this will change over the coming years, but it's worth examining potential frameworks for responsible digital archiving within our organizations and make public de-identified legacy web content risk mitigation solutions in the public domains as part of our collective acknowledgement of responsibility. What was once casual, personal, and inconsequential can now be mobilized by AI in ways that original authors never imagined or desired. This moment calls for GLAM institutions' digital ethics to adapt to the reality of intelligent, non-human agents navigating our shared information space. Without this shift, we risk eroding trust and undermining the very values that we are meant to protect. Thank you.